Hey guys, I want to share some stuff with you. It's a pretty difficult subject, but because of where I'm at in my journey, about 3 years ago, I started journaling. I was in a pretty bad relationship, and I just needed to start journaling to find a better way to heal, to cope. Brought me closer to God, in the Word every day, and I wanted to know the how and why of who I am and some of the things I was doing and why was I in these type of relationships. Um, I'll go into more in that in detail here in a little bit, but I'm going to be start posting stuff probably around the spring or summer next year. I had the book going to be coming out. That book is taking so many different directions than what I originally thought. Now, keep in mind, I didn't think it'd be a book until maybe about a third of the way in. And then I thought it'd be a book for maybe this purpose, but it ended up being this purpose and then this purpose. I want to share something very near and dear to my heart and very personal, very pivotal point in my life. Also, kind of a point where I had withdrew a lot from sharing too much as a means to protect what I would always say the mother of my children. I remember I was married 23 years, and I finally got to a point where it was time I had to end it. Or there's no another way. I've felt abandoned for years prior, and I'll never forget it. Not then, but it rang loud with me later. Where a friend of mine, I had told him, I said, "Yeah, we've already worked it all out. We've got the paperwork. It's about 40, 45, 55 in my favor. We're gonna turn it in next month." And he says, "Nah, there's a storm coming." And he was right. And it would be one of the greatest storms of my life. And I think people sometimes with that type of wisdom from the outside looking in, they see it a little bit differently than I would. So anyway, I've got my notes here. I just want to kind of stay on track as best I can. So we agreed to the papers, and and she signed it. It was on my desk. But then she finally felt that it was happening. I think at that point, because it had been discussed before, and she didn't really think it had ever happened. Now I know why she never really thought it would happen. She That weekend she signed everything. It hit her, and we had a big situation at the house in front of the kids. Now, guys, what I'm sharing with you is pretty personal, but it's necessary because I need people to see an inside track of how this kind of stuff works. Because where mine may be to this scale, there's people out there dealing with a lot more. Because we look at someone like maybe me, a former football player, he's tough. Surely that can't be the right story. But what I'm telling you is all documented by court stuff, audio, video, emails, texts, a lot. So, this is going to be one of those hard videos for me to go over because it's very revealing. But it's necessary because there'll be a lot of other videos I'll be sharing related to different aspects of codependency, narcissism, and anywhere in that spectrum. So, for the purposes and intent of when I use the word narcissist or codependent, anytime I use that term, it's in the sense that they're pretty much off the chart. They would qualify for that, but most people don't go in and get a diagnosis. Not only that, it's hard to get. But everything I learned in this journey that I've been on, which again, when I got divorced, about a year later, I said, I got to look in the mirror. I got to figure out, the pride issues, some of this other stuff, because you just kind of internalize it and say, what can I do better? And that would be the beginnings of it. But I would need to go through another couple relationships over the 7 years since I've been married to finally figure it out. In the sense of recognizing it and it'll be a lifelong journey. So anyway, the kids are out the house. It was very unfortunate. She just had a breakdown in the sense that she was pretty violent. Now, I will use the term covert narcissist confidently and based on everything I've seen and everything I've learned. And the covert narcissist is one of the most deadly because they're usually the quiet, little, sweet-looking person, but they're not. They're not. The grandiose narcissist is easy because you can tell it from a mile away. Look at me, right? But this was something I did not know existed, did not see, never studied it. So that evening, she calls me to the bedroom and she says, "If you leave me, I'm going to kill you." I'm thinking, in my head, I'm excusing it, thinking she's out of her mind. She wouldn't mean that. And I said, "You just need to relax, take a break. I'm going to go out here." And then she started losing it. Got on top of the bed, getting the kids' attention, and screaming at the top of her lungs, saying, "I'm going to kill myself, and I'm going to spread the blood all over this bed. And you're going to have to live with it and everything." And it was pretty traumatic. In my head, I excused it. Her back's against the wall. She's saying stuff she doesn't mean. Okay. So I ended up going out of town thinking, okay. So I went to San Francisco. I went to Muir Woods. It's a place that's quiet. I just need to get my mind quiet and be ready because I was going to go into the next chapter of my life. That we were going to be done. Everything's signed, done. So when I got back out of town, I got to the house. That document was missing. No signature. It was gone. Gone, period. Went to the computer. Erased. I was like, this ain't good. I couldn't get a hold of her. And after a couple of days, I got frustrated. And I said, "What's going on?" And I couldn't get a hold of her. So finally I said, I guess I got to, do this the hard way and call attorneys, right? So I get on the phone and I said, "Who's the best guy in town?" And I call him. There's a place in Dallas. I was on the phone. It felt like 10 minutes, probably about 4 or 5. They come back and they say, "Hey, no, we're sorry. We have a conflict." And I said, what's going on? She goes, "Well, your wife has hired us." I'm like, "Oh, geez." So she's filing. This is crazy. I thought, we'd settle this. So it was pretty bad. So anyway, sadly enough, and I'll just say it now, and I'll add on this later. She fraudulently filed a restraining order claiming abuse by me over her and the children, and started a smear campaign with me, with my relatives, mutual friends, friends that we had for years. A lot of which I didn't know until years later that she was doing this. She filed a false power of attorney, felony, withdrew money, and bought a house. Now, I did not know until a title company emailed me randomly one day saying, "Hey, you missed an initial on this POA." I go, "What POA?" And I contacted my attorney and I told him, I told the title company, "This isn't me." He said, "Great, that's constructive notice. They can't do anything with it." 2 weeks later, they still filed it, which was crazy, right? So sadly, I would learn later this was all done through my sister. She manipulated my sister to be in on this. She would later lose her job, and just because I didn't press it any forward, she should have lost her license, but I forgave her about a year later. Then the ex-wife, was using manipulation to guilt my children. "Your dad's going to throw me in jail and this and that." But all the while, she's still claiming that I'm abusive. So now she elevates going from an affidavit signed for a restraining order to a protective order, which now had major legal ramifications if I was to violate that. So, delay after delay. That was probably some of the darkest time of my life because of my kids. I cried a lot. I couldn't have access to them, my two youngest. And so we finally had our day in court. August 12th, Friday. August 15th, a Monday. August 12th, when her attorneys gave the opening statement, and you gotta understand, we had gone through months now, back and forth. So I'm just fast forwarding here. Gave the opening statement. And I was sitting there going, "Oh my goodness, there's no way I can win. This lady's making up crazy stuff. And you just sit there thinking, they're going to believe her. So prior to that court hearing, I had petitioned the judge to ask her to interview my two youngest children. Because I was like, hey, she's making up these lies saying I'm abusing my kids and that I've hit her and abused her. I would never lay a hand on that woman. Never had, never threatened it. That's just not my nature. And so luckily, the judge interviewed the two children. And so that helped. Then unfortunately, we had two kids at trial have to testify. Now, take a step out. I'm past those tears. I'm past the sadness of it all. I've often wondered, now that I'm no longer in that defense mode, I used to always excuse the actions. Well, she's backed in the corner. She felt like she was desperate. She was just going to do whatever she needed to do. No. You do not lie and get your children involved. To me, since then, looking at it so many times, that is absolutely one of the most evil things a parent can do with a child, or children in this case. So, at the trial, her psychologist would try to come up with some crazy explanations as to why she threatened my life and why she threatened suicide. Later, my oldest would testify. He could only recall 2 incidents where I had spanked him over the years. Now, granted, it was probably 30 times over the years when he was younger. He just doesn't remember that because it's one of those things where, you do that again, we're going to get to the closet, right? I spanked the children, the 2 oldest, and a couple, the youngest, a few times at most, but always in the closet after a few minutes so they can calm down and sometimes so I could calm down, right? So nonetheless, he only remembers 2 times, and make sure I get my notes here right. And then my middle son's testifying, and I don't know how she can create these stories, but her attorney said, your mom mentioned a 2x4 that your dad used, and my son had to withhold laughing and said, my mom can exaggerate sometimes. And that was his testimony. Then my ex-wife would end up having to testify, thank goodness. And luckily by then, with the kids testifying, it was looking really bad for her. She'd be questioned about her 2 affidavits. Now, these were the affidavits. The first one, she said, he hit me. She said, like, the bathroom within that last month. The second affidavit, when she stepped up and said it's a protective order because they said that one's got more teeth in it, she referenced the same event but now called it 7 years ago and put it in a different place in the house. So on the stand, to say that my attorney ate her lunch would be an understatement. The good thing I had going for me is my kids testified already at that point. And I think she felt like she was in dangerous territory because she knew she was caught. Affidavits, the forgery on the power of attorney. I just needed my day in court. That was it, right? So, she knew she was caught. So then my attorney explained to her the ramifications if I had violated the order, describing to her the consequences of perjury. So then she started in with her line of questioning again. And I asked her, told her, you've got these affidavits that conflict one another. When has your husband ever touched you, laid a hand on you, threatened you in any manner? And that's when she started doing something very similar to like pleading the fifth. She says, I'm sorry, I can't answer that question. And she goes, I'm sorry, what? And she goes, I can't answer that question. Judge looks at her. She was to the right here. And she said, ma'am, did you not understand the question? And she didn't say anything. She goes, would you like me to have it repeated? And she goes, yes, ma'am. Attorney asked her again, the same question. And then she immediately said, I'm sorry, I can't answer that question. At that point, I knew that case was won. Thank goodness. But that was a Friday. We still had the weekend and Monday for court. Over the weekend, my son, one of my sons, was staying with me. And he says, I need to show you my Twitter account. I go, what's up? He goes, well, it fades when it shows it's been read. It should be bold when it's not. And I said, okay, so what's your point? Someone's reading my emails. I said, really? He goes, I think it's mom. Or probably, my other son's name is what he said. And I said, well, let's find out. And then I came up with a plan. I said, let's come up with a completely bogus type message that if they respond to it, we'll know. So we came up with a plan that said, oh, poor Rocky. I hope they don't find out. They'll think that we killed him. Poor dog. Tragically, that was tragic what happened to him. We didn't say he got killed, but it's tragic what happened to him. And so we knew that would put everyone on alert. And sure enough, within a few hours, animal control and an officer came to the front door. They were busted. Showed him the dog. Now we had the evidence that we needed. And so she knew at that point that she had been caught lying about any physical abuse. So now she's on social media. This is very, very elementary. She's on social media saying emotional abuse is just the same as physical abuse. And how these postings, which my son, another son, screenshot and gave to us, so I gave to my attorney. And so that would be now what she was accused me of. And so this was brought up at trial on Monday, and the time we were posting made her look even a lot worse. I would testify that day too, and it was a tearful experience on the stand because, wow, I just was at a loss for words to think that someone could do that to me. I was just shocked. But anyway, we would go from something 55-45 in my favor to her having to accept like something like 80-20. She did not get the house, none of the businesses, not the vacation place, hardly anything. And we each had to spend over $100,000, which she had to set up on a payment plan. So that is what the narcissist does. It's textbook. You leave them and you ruin that image of I'm a married person, look at me, how great I am. They care about image. The divorce, like my friend said, there's a storm coming. I've got a sister, grandiose narcissist. She had a different upbringing than we did. I knew that when I was 13 years old and she was the baby, and she folded those arms and said, I want Whataburger, after mom made dinner, and my dad went out and got it. I was like, what? Who is this? What dad is this? Man, they put her on a pedestal, and she's a wretched individual, grandiose narcissist. And she put her ex-husband through 4 years in that divorce, dragged it out to punish him. And I've learned all that to identify these terms because that's exactly what it is. So, in the following April, she files another restraining order. Lies on the affidavit. I represent myself pro se at that point because I'm thinking, this is a joke. There's no evidence. We get to court. She filled out all this stuff about abuse again, and I'm asking, why did you fill this out? She goes, well, I'm worried about that. And the judge is like, any evidence? And there was nothing. Tossed it out. But that's what she was doing. Just still trying to, live in that false narrative, which is what narcissists do. And since then, I've heard through my children, and I've seen through their screenshots that she has contacted girlfriends I would later have and become Facebook friends with them. That's stalking. I also lost a major client to her, which she had no part of the business, but she's still a realtor. And that's just a lack of integrity. That type of individual that's terrible for our industry, which I suspect was foul play, but I let it slide. I've also had 4 to 5 page anonymous letters blasting me, describing me as a domestic abuser. No evidence, nothing to ever support that, nothing, other than the claims that she made at trial, which was tossed out, and sent to girlfriends I would have. And then they would show it to me going, what's this? And I'd look at it and go, oh gosh. Now, it's anonymous. But for me personally, who's motivated to do that? The only person that would fraudulently fill out a POA, attempt to tell a judge that he did all this, and was far from it. And also sellers, listings. And she's a realtor. She has access to MLS. Again, those are the things I have not been able to prove, and I don't think I'll ever be able to because it's a letter. I've got copies of it. That's it. She has since told me several times, "You've ruined my life," because of divorcing her. But she's also flirted a few times in text messages in between breakups. "Oh, I'm sorry that didn't work out with so-and-so. Hey, I'm reading this book on this." And then another one was, "Oh my gosh, it was so funny. I saw you on Match. It said we were a perfect match." And I'm sitting there going, I want to vomit. But that's flirtatious comments. So despite all that, her narrative is she tells people, well, he's a narcissist. And because that's what they do, right? They blame shift. And she still says that I abused her. And that she divorced me, which is a technicality, right? Because we already filled out the paperwork, which I told her I wanted. And then she went and filed. But the whole narrative now shifts because they don't want to look like the good guy there on that part. So why now? Why am I sharing all this? So, like I said, I'm writing my book, Letters of Goodbye. It's been a 3-year process. Unfortunately, it's enough to fill 4 books. But that journaling has changed my life. Because I wanted to know the how and why. I went to my childhood. I went from everything forward to where I'm at now. It was agonizing. So, within a year after my divorce, I got into a toxic relationship. A grandiose narcissist. And then I figured out, only because of my journaling, all the research, 3 years, guys, 3 years, that I'm codependent. Codependent has a connotation of, a guy that does drugs, guy that does alcohol. It's not. They do that, but I always wondered, well, why didn't I do any of that? Well, it's just the way I was raised, right? But, well, how did my codependency get fed? Because codependency in an abusive home, you learn to have a lot of insecurities, which stinks, right? You learn that you have a lot of weaknesses. You learn that there's not enough self-love there. You don't feel seen. You don't feel heard. You don't feel loved. That was the entirety of my marriage. It was abusive, and I'll go over that here in a second. But I got into that grandiose narcissist relationship, and it was toxic. A lot of people who really know me remember that. There were several rounds of that. When I finally was able to break it off with her, she broke in my house around 12:30 after I was sleeping and said, "If I can't have you, no one will." I had to file a protective order on her. Now, guys, I will tell you this, that I freely admit this in the book. I was one of those guys, didn't say it out loud, thought it. When I saw a female go back and back and back into an abusive relationship, I'm thinking, are they stupid or what? After I went into that relationship and came out finally, I would never say that again. Because until you've been there, you don't know. And now I've been there. I was choked, hit, threatened with my life with that girl as well. Crazy. And the guy that she ended up dating afterwards for 4 years, she bloodied him up and she went to jail for it and was prosecuted. So I had a protective order on her. And then later I would go into a relationship with a covert narcissist. Again, using that term not too lightly, with the sense that all the markers were there. All the documented evidence with the emails, the text screens, shots, the lies, the back and forth, where the relationship starts, where it ends, where it starts, where it ends, because they put you through that yo-yo. And having to learn more about myself, that was pretty humbling. But I needed to know that. And that's the other reason why I will be starting that other YouTube page and just kind of putting it in a parallel journey with the book and sharing with people, because I don't think a lot of people understand that. So why bring up the ex-wife, and where did that come in? Because remember, I started the book as a healing journey. Now that healing journey was letters of goodbye. Very, very romanticized at first. For me, it was a process of thinking I was letting go. But what I was really doing was holding on to the goodbyes. And they would be a little more romantic in the sense of taking my back to that place, right? But then over time, I started realizing, wow, okay, now I'm starting to see these letters. I'm starting to let go. This is good. Not jumping into a relationship because I was like, I'm not going to do that again. And so then it would become learning about the inner child when I ran across that. Because if I'm going to learn the how and why of all I do, how do I interact, why I do the things I do, I wanted to know. I wanted to know every part of me, why I did what I did. And I'm at the fine tooth comb stage, and it's crazy to some of the stuff I pick up on where I have a thought like, oh, and so you catch it, you know where it originates from and why it's that way. So I learned a lot. And then I had another pivot moment, which is why I even brought this up. It was at my son's wedding. I had the privilege and honor. He asked me to officiate by proxy, which meant kind of a feeling and a mock setup because they had eloped. And his best friend, one of his best friends, I think it's his best friend, married them at a very beautiful location, but just three of them, right? So then he asked me to do that, and I felt it was a wonderful privilege, right? So we went through all that, and then at the dinner, my son's at obviously the table with his bride, and I'm at the table with my ex-wife and all my kids and my mom. And I start trying to share stuff like, hey, congratulations, this is a great time. We couldn't, we did it together to get these kids to this point, regardless of our history and past. And she looks at me like she's not listening to me all of a sudden. I said, you were looking at me, or did you hear anything I said? I'm sorry, are you talking to me? And I said, well, yeah, I just was trying to share some nice things with you. It was enough silence that all the kids knew I was talking to her. And she goes, I stopped listening to you a long time ago. And she said it very just mean. Right in front of my kids. And we're at a nice day. I'm like, how is this even happening? I literally got into a depressive state for the next 5-6 months. Because of this. Everything up to that point, I learned that a codependent will magnetize to a narcissist. I mean magnetize. A codependent is a giver. A narcissist is a taker. We give, we love, we want peace, we want harmony. Oh, well, it must be my fault the relationship's having problems, so I'll work on it. We'll do this. And we accept the blame, and we're made to feel crazy. And anything you do is not enough for them. Not enough. And you learn about all the phases where they love bomb you, and then they devalue you because once they put you up here, they're like, wait a minute, I'm the narcissist. You can be better than me. Their subconscious does that. And they knock you down, then they discard you, and then they hoover you back. Oh, yeah, well, we could, let's do this. We could do it. We can make it work. And then codependent, looking to that first image that they presented in the beginning, never realized who they were. But we want to believe that. I think some of you will remember the Johnny Depp case. That's what it is. It's all a made-up thing in our head because of some painted version of who they are in that love bomb stage. And we're the suckers for it because, remember, we have a lot of insecurities. Like, oh my gosh, they love a lot of the things I love. This is amazing. But what they're doing is they're mirroring you. You're kind of falling in love with yourself. You like scriptures? Oh my gosh, I love them too. They send you 30 scriptures. You're like, wow, this person's really spiritual. This is amazing. I love it. No, that's not who they are. They're mirroring you. So it's pretty bad. So I had to come to the realization that I had been married to a covert narcissist. And it slapped me so hard because I didn't want to accept it. Now I'm going to tell you, this is humbling too. I was in counseling within a year. Before the last parts of the divorce, just for my own personal benefit. And I'll never forget my last session with that counselor. She telling me, You keep defending your ex-wife. You keep defending her. I said, what are you talking about? She goes, every time I'm trying to get you to understand she's responsible for this portion right here, you give her some excuse. And I thought the lady was crazy. I was like, that's the mother of my children, right? No, she was right. She was right. I just wasn't ready to listen to it. So then I had to examine how did this happen over 23 years. And then I realized when you're in a not a normal relationship, but when you're in a relationship with a narcissist in a short period of time, they love bomb you and they bring you in, they wrap you up, they make you feel like you're $1 million. And they do. And a lot of people can relate to that. And then they'll devalue you, then they'll get rid of you. Like, well, I don't think we should be together. By then, you're like hooked on them, right? It's a drug. It's codependency. It's an addiction. It is an addiction. Now, why did I not have codependency issues when I was married? I did. I didn't know it. I was successful in business. Oh my goodness. We couldn't have done it without you. You are amazing. That's a dopamine fix. Daddy's home. 5 kids. That's a dopamine fix. Working out, dopamine fix. Coaching soccer. Oh my goodness, you've been so great for little Johnny. You're a great coach. Dopamine fix. I never knew it. My marriage was always struggling, suffering, but it was something that you learn because you have everything else telling you inside. You are loved, you are seen, you are appreciated. Kids grow up, you get divorced, you're no longer coaching soccer. You're going, who am I married to? Who's this person? Didn't know it at the time. Those were the reasons, because I didn't have all my cups being filled by those external factors, which is what codependency is. So that was a tough one for me. So I had to start examining, well, where was all this? Where did this happen? Because she had every classic sign of covert narcissism with the way she handled the divorce. Textbook. This is how they do it. This is what they're going to do. And I'm looking at it, going, oh my goodness. Now, in those other relationships, if it's a year, 6 months, love bomb you, devalue, discard, hoover you back this. You have clear, distinct markers. But when you're in a long marriage, it's drawn out. And I had to replay in my head. Early in the marriage, when we had issues, she'd go to bed at night without talking to me. And I'm sitting there going, how can she sleep? And I'm tossing and turning, having anxiety. How can we not work out our issue? I want to work this out before we go to bed. Guys, those days would turn into months to turn into years. That is their number one emotional abuse that they give to you. I had to understand that. I've had to even understand that I suffer with PTSD because I was with that person so long in that environment. When someone shuts you out, there was evenings that I would be in bed, facing the way I would sleep, and every once in a while I'd be up, and she would quietly slip into the side of the bed. Now, people may say, well, why didn't you leave her then? I didn't think anything different. And because we internalize things and we think it's our fault, it's like, oh man, I gotta just try harder. And man, there's so many things I did to try to win her affections, because that's what we do. We're givers. We want to work it out. We want harmony. We want to feel at peace. And that was probably the worst experience looking back on it now. And I did not know those tactics. I did not know that there's ways to handle that, because we're fixers. We want to fix it, especially codependents, right? You can't fix them. You can't save them, which, by the way, is why I attracted to the 2 major relationships that I was in with narcissists. They're victims. All narcissists play victims. They're victims. And you think you can fix them. And unfortunately, you kind of go back to your childhood. As a counselor would later tell me, you're kind of wanting to save the mom you never could save. You're trying to fix the dad that was abusive to you. You're not going to fix them. Now, I had to find out the hard way. That's also a toxic trait. And that's why, I had a counselor years ago tell me unhealthy people attract unhealthy people. And when he said that, I was like, oh, crap, that means I'm unhealthy. And he was right. Because codependency is unhealthy. You have to do enough work to figure a lot of this stuff out to get to a point that is considered somewhat healthy. But it's a lifetime recovery. Just the other day, I was in a parking garage and someone had blocked the road. And I'm sitting there going, you know, like, oh, wow. And that's back to my childhood where I didn't have fairness and justice. So you learn to be the hall monitor. No, ain't going to work. You can't fix anything. You can't change things. There's something you just got to learn to let go. So I'm catching myself on a lot of other little things here and there. But that's what we do. Oh, man. I'm glad I wrote notes. One of the hardest things I had to accept, and I was so upset. The next tactic, the surefire one, with all the distinct markers, is how she handled counseling. I'll never forget in 99 or 2000, I go into the counselor's office. Over the years, she would always agree. She'd set it up. But then she'd meet with them for 2, 3, 4 sessions before I even got in. Why didn't you catch on any of that before? Because you got to think like them, and you don't think like them. Cheaters will think everyone else is cheating. Liars will think everyone else is lying. And people like that will think covertly and cleverly and set the narrative. I didn't know that. I'll never forget that first counselor. She was a stay-at-home mom. The ex-wife was. I was running the business, and I remember that counselor telling me, well, if you did more things around the house, you'd have less time to complain. And I was a little prideful with that. I sucked it in, and on the way home, I'm thinking, what a jerk. But then I said, nope, you know what? As counselor, I got to do it. That's what codependents do. That's what actually healthy people do. If they hear something, they're going to try to make it right. And they're going to accept responsibility. Narcissists do not accept accountability. They do not accept responsibility. And it's never their fault. And everything since then, she's played the perfect victim. Complains to kids, complains to several people, numerous people. That was all my fault. Well, that's kind of the giveaway. Oops. Busted, right? So, never accepted any blame. So, what happened that next morning, I said, you know what? I'm going to change it. And so, the next morning, I woke up a little early. For the next 16 years, I woke up at 4:30 or 5. A lot of my clients would get emails from me early morning. Wow, you're up early. I'd go work out, come back, and I would clean. I would clean sometimes 2 bathrooms here, 1 bathroom there, sweep them off the floors, do some of the kitchen stuff. I cleaned. And then I got the breakfast prepared for the kids. They never had a cold meal except for Fridays when we had donuts, and they got tired of that in their older years. But warm meal, got them ready for school, and that was my contribution. And I said, I'm going to be better because you internalize it that it's your fault. Crazy stuff. Well, looking back on it now, I only suspect that some of the later counselors in the later years kind of caught on to it because she would start complaining later, say, they always take your side. I'm like, I don't feel that. So I didn't really know that until about 2 years after our marriage. I was really frustrated. She was no help on co-parenting, doing stuff underhanded I did not like. Still defending her. So I convinced her, and I talked to my counselor. I said, would you mind, maybe having a session or 2 with us, help us out with co-parenting? Again, maybe there's something I can do better. I'll never forget this. The counselor's right across from me. I'm on the couch. She's on the couch there. She scoots on up to the edge. She's got a notebook. And counselor did his introduction, and she starts going over these lists. Did he tell you he did this? Did he tell you he was this way? Did he tell you this way? He's like, ma'am. He's like, ma'am, we're here to work on the co-parenting and this and that. Yeah, but did he tell you this? And he finally interrupted her and said, ma'am, he's told me all that stuff. But did he tell you this? Yeah, he's been very genuine. This man's been with me for about 7-8 months. He's been trying to work on his own little issues, and he just thought this was co-parenting. She left. In her mind, she couldn't stand the thought that maybe I was saying all these bad things about her, and I hadn't, and I wasn't. But it makes sense. Now, with narcissism, that's what they do, try to control the narrative. It was all a ruse by her to get into the door, and it was sad. One of the hardest things I had was she helped with she did the bookkeeping for our business. And every year it would be postpone our taxes to October and still be late. Guys, they will push every single button. I can't make this more clear than I can ever make anything clear. When you're with someone, they're going to know every bit of your vulnerabilities, and they will expose it if they're narcissistic. And that's where they get you. I remember going out of my way. I tried to get her to relinquish that, and I tried to hire someone else. No. Absolutely not. And I remember some extremes, silly, sounds stupid now, where we were in those later years, and I said, look, I need you to treat it like your life depends on this. You swear to me, no matter what. You put our marriage on. You're not going to miss this deadline. Absolutely not. What do they say? You just keep doing the same thing, expect different results. It wasn't going to change. But in my head, I had to rationalize. And in my head, you kind of go on a tangent to try and make an impression, thinking it'll stick. I had a sales counselor I worked with years ago. He learned this from a book that he did. He had a 2-hour contract presentation that he had to do to go over the paperwork. And I remember he always did this at this one part. He put his pin in his ear. He says, oh, you're not going to remember a lot of this stuff, but you're going to remember this pin in the ear. And so when you have a warranty issue, I'm going to tell you, remember that pin in the ear? Oh, yeah. So he did it as something very memorable for them to never forget this warranty issue thing that he was going to tell them on how to make the claim. And so in my mind, I would always sometimes just go something extreme, something silly to try to get her to understand the severity of it. Didn't work. In fact, that's what they love because it's control, and they'll push your buttons. And that's leads to what they call reactive abuse. If you study this stuff like I have a lot, reactive abuse is a tough one. That's where they get you to blow up, and you do. And then they go, wow, you're crazy. That's their game. And it's bad. With a lot of stuff around the house that she did that would push those buttons. I really honestly believe, and the research shows it too, that covert narcissists are the most dangerous because a lot of this is calculated, it's behind the scenes. And like a grandiose, you know the punch is coming. You know when they blow up and they're mad and they're there. Covert narcissists have the same amount of anger. They just push it through you. That's just how they learn growing up. It's crazy. Unfortunately, I remember talking to my son, one of my kids, about 3 years ago. We're on the back patio. And I said, do you remember any of those blow-ups? And he remembered one. He said that I put my hand in the pantry and cleared out that shelf and made a big scene. That's tragic and sad. And I remember what happened. Oh, I'm going to the store. I'm going to pick up these 3 items. You need anything? Yeah, oh yeah, I've been needing this. Thank you so much. Didn't get it. Now remember, there's all these other things that are in between that too. And you're sitting there going, are you kidding me? It's a punishing behavior that they do. It is called reactive abuse because they're abusing you. But I always internalize it like, damn, I lost my cool. There was about 4 of those incidents. One in the closet where she got me so mad. Twice, actually. I got a rack of clothes and threw them down. Because she got in my face one time. And I never lay a hand on a woman. But reactive abuse is real. I have a hard time accepting it because you still have the choice to react. But you don't understand. With being a codependent, having every button pushed, and you're at the most vulnerable times. Yeah, I remember sometimes I'd comfort eat. And that's still one of my issues. By the way, that's codependency. I'll just numb myself. I'll have some sugary stuff, right? I had to figure that out. I remember one time, because I journaled. I remember one time I was eating Twizzlers watching, football. She comes in the room and goes, you ate half that bag? I said, yeah. And she was always, 5, 6, 100 pounds. And so she would treat me like that, right? I was like, she kidding me? But I was always working out and whatever. But then I remember one time, I used to joke about this with people. I thought it was funny, but it's not. I learned what it is. I remember one time we had some pictures that came in. I looked at them. That's back when they were, you had to get them developed. I said, "Whoa, I think I've gained a little weight. Have you noticed if I gained any weight?" "Oh no." "Well, yeah, I can tell when you're naked." "Yeah." Now I laughed. I thought it was funny. But this year I get it. Now that I'm in this part of the study, no, those are those little things that they do. This is not healthy, right? So let me just look at my notes right here. So codependents are givers, narcissists are takers. That's why they magnetize towards each other. I would later learn from an uncle. He's like, "Why didn't you say all this stuff? Or tell us about what happened?" I said, "What are you talking about?" "Well, she said all this, this, and this." I said, "Why didn't you tell me?" "Well, we just thought maybe you'd come around and tell us." I said, "Well, I didn't think to tell anybody anything. It was kind of our business." Because, again, it's protective, right? It was a nasty divorce, unfortunately. It didn't have to be that way. But the problem is, since the divorce, she's quietly, sadistically alienated me from my children. All 5 now. There's those last 2. I was like, there's no way. Now I give them grace because I was in it 23 years. I get it. I know what manipulation can do. I know. I mean, people who know me know I'm passionate, care deeply, exhibit a high amount of empathy. I care deeply. That's one of the things that gets me in trouble in the bad relationship. That people know I adore my children and my faith is important. Narcissists use children as pawns. And they'll do anything to appear like the victim and make you look like you're the crazy person. My youngest son was working for me last year. Got in the business, all excited. I said, "Great, let's get it going." Walked him through a few deals. Then he started having issues. He told me, "Mom says I can't use her printer." I said, "You're kidding me." He lives at home, by the way. And then she says, "If I'm working with you, I'm going to pay rent now." I said, "Does she charge Matthew rent?" She goes, "No." And then he was upset. He goes, "Dad, there's an underlying tone and pressure that we can't have a relationship with you." I said, "Son, I've already known that. But you're stronger than that. I appreciate that." Well, no longer working with me. You'd almost have to have the perfect setup where he's got deals coming in left and right. It's got to go perfect because the first time it doesn't, "See, I told you." And then he feels pulled. Can you blame him? That's his mother, right? I can say he's an adult. You could say I'm an adult too, but look what I was doing. You think you know better, but it's codependency. It stinks. And he has codependency tendencies. Which, by the way, I'm frustrated because I have seen through a couple of my kids' own relationships by looking at the social media of the people they were dating. Woe unto me, poor me, come save me. And I'm saddened because that's the portrait that they grew up with, seeing in their mother quietly behind the scenes. Sad. Because if that's what they're portraying, that they're a victim, then they want to do everything for the mom. They just don't know that that's what they're being programmed subconsciously. It's sad. So why is a codependent put up with so much crap? Try to fix things, try to make it right. I grew up in an abusive home. Abandoned by a mother, lived on my own my last year and a half in high school. My dad was incarcerated in jail at that point. But I suffered pretty bad with abuse. I had to lie to school so the CPS wouldn't do anything. I had to lie to a couple other people that had seen stuff on me. And what you do, and you don't know this, is as a kid, it's being programmed in your head that that's love. Take the good and the bad. And in your head as a child, you're telling yourself a story. Oh, he was probably just having a bad mood, and he didn't really mean that. My mom really loves me. She just can't protect me. She's not strong enough. She sees me. You tell yourself stories because you want harmony, you want peace, you want love. And that's the perfect makings for codependency. And it's sad. So why do we stay in that relationship? Well, because they're filling the cup of, "Oh, I see you. You're amazing." They love bomb the heck out of you. They make you feel like amazing. I was married to my ex-wife within 6 months of meeting her. They make you feel amazing. You think they're everything. Marriage and having kids is where the number one tools for narcissists to hook you. So, crazy. Now, fortunately, I'm in a healthy relationship now, but I'll tell you, it's kind of a joke that I've had with her in a good way, now that she understands how I've explained it. I joked with her up front. I said, you're kind of boring. And she's not. But you got to remember, the codependent gravitates towards these people that make you feel like $1,000,000. But they also mirror you because they're listening to your story. Oh, I like the same color. I like that same music. Oh, you too? Oh. And then they're all lies. And as most people know, when you start telling a lie, it takes more lies to keep up with the lies. And before you know it, you get caught. And so that's a dopamine rush. That's a rush of, wow, is this what it feels like? This is amazing. I love this. That's addiction. That's addiction. My addiction is just a different drug of choice. Some people get that through drugs and alcohol and other stuff, but I didn't realize that mine was through the relationships after my divorce. I didn't know that. And that was hard to accept, but I'm grateful that I understand that now. And so what's interesting about that is with the person I've been with for over a year now, there was healthy development. There was no rush into this and rush into that. You take your time. But for me, I was like, wow, I can identify this now. In the past, I would need someone exciting, need someone that's going to make me feel this way. Don't need that. Let the relationship take care of itself naturally. Lady Gaga has a song, A Million Reasons. Guys, that is the codependent anthem. It's called A Million Reasons. I have 1,000,000 reasons to leave, to walk away. That's the song. I only need one to stay. Now, for the codependent, we'll make up a reason. They didn't mean that. They're going to change. And that's what's sad about that. And that's codependency. So, my goal is just to help people. Share little clips here and there. But ultimately, by print and through the audiobook, sharing that with people. It'll be out. It's called Letters of Goodbye. It does parallel the Christian faith, meaning we're taught to die to self. So those parts of me that, whether it's pride or these little issues here and there. The other day, thinking about, you jerk, I can't believe you blocking the road. I'm like, wow, I'm glad I'm catching myself. Because even just thinking that's not right. And I'm thinking, man, what a fine-tooth comb. But those are the parts we die to self. We're never going to be perfect. The finishing working of Christ within us is not done until the day of Christ, meaning that we die or he comes back. But we're Christians not because we're good, because we're not. Only God is good. That's what Christ said in Scripture. And I talk about that in the book too, because there's a big portrayal in a lot of these churches, and I was in one of them, that you're judged by these good works, and that doesn't do anything for you. That good work should only be reflected because of your faith in Christ. But that's a whole other topic. But my thing is to help people. And truth is what prevails. And so it has been a tough journey to realize that I was with someone. And this is the thing that's hard for me to say, because I don't defend her anymore. When you're with a monster, you're with someone narcissistic, you're with someone evil, you've got to call it that. Because if you don't, it's like the scripture is saying you're calling evil good and good evil. The codependent, in their mind, they make bad things good and good things a lot greater. No more. I was married to a monster. And that monster is still out there saying terrible things. And still using her own children as pawns. And to me, that's evil.